Holy shh. The Korean Zombie with a triumphant return knocked out Dennis the Menace Bermudez in the very first round with a vicious uppercut. Welcome to the Rearview Mirror. My name is Flyin Brian J. With me for the fourth time in a row is Wesley Riddle from All That MMA. You can follow him on Twitter at All That MMA. What'd it do, Wesley? What'd you think of that?
Oh, dude, that main event was insane. Just the fact Chan Sung Jung, after 3 years, we'll talk about it, but it comes back victoriously with a vicious first round knockout. Awesome main event. Pretty decent card overall. Then again, some of the main card wasn't the best, but
There was a lot of redeeming value in that main event. Chan Sung Jung and Dennis Bermudez, there was a lot of ebbs and flows in that short fight. Let me look at the official. It was at 2:49 of round number one. So Dennis the Menace was landing an overhand right a few times on Chan Sung Jung. It seemed to wobble him for a second. Chan got the double underhook, was able to recover briefly, went for a takedown. Dennis fought it off, and then Chan went to look for a lot of counters again, and then was able to hit that uppercut. Are you super impressed with Chan Sung Jung's performance here, or do you think that it's a little bit because Dennis Bermudez has a really lacking chin, famously has a lacking chin?
I was honestly really impressed with the performance. I don't think it was too much about Bermudez's fading chin. If you actually think about it, the only time that Bermudez has ever been knocked out unconscious was that Jeremy Stephens fight. And besides that, that was in the third round, of course. I don't think he's ever been knocked out before. Very impressive from Bermudez, or not, excuse me, from Chan to return after 3.5 years from the service. With, I guess, he did train a little bit, but probably not as much in comparison to Bermudez, who has been active. Bermudez had been on that 2-fight win streak before suffering this knockout loss. So I think overall, Chan with a fantastic performance. Did eat a couple shots in there, but still looked pretty sharp. I feel like that fight was going to be a stepping stone for him to move in the right direction for future fights. So I think that was a pretty good fight and pretty impressive, especially coming back for the first time in 3.5 years.
Dude, incredibly impressive. I was just now thinking while you were talking that the guy didn't seem to miss a single beat. So, Wes, before we got on air here, we were talking about what's next for the Korean Zombie. And whatever it is, I'm going to be super excited to watch it because the man doesn't know how to have a boring fight. Like you said, most of the main card, or a lot of this card was a little bit lackluster, but that main event has me charged up. I got a little burst of adrenaline, and I'm ready to rock. So, but you were mentioning who you thought TKZ should fight next, and Amon, sorry bro, I'm mispronouncing your name, has a suggestion. What do you think of Cub Swanson versus the Korean Zombie, #1 contender fight as the co-main event on the Aldo versus Max Holloway card?
Ooh, that's pretty interesting. I like that one. Cub Swanson wasn't the first person to pop into my mind. I feel like Cub, based off the performances that he's had, possibly, and the fact that he's been a lot more active, I feel like he may just deserve somebody a little bit higher, or maybe not higher, maybe more so active than Chan Sung Jung. However, Chan just beat a top 10 featherweight in the world, so I feel like you have to throw him there in the mix. I think some options for him, some of the ones that I thought of, the first option I thought of was Jeremy Stephens. Kind of rethought about it, and I think you and I kind of decided that a good choice of an opponent for Chan Sung Jung next could be Yair Rodriguez, who just beat BJ Penn. Yair is definitely developing in his skill set too, a very entertaining and dynamic fighter. Then you have Chan Sung Jung, a really scrappy fighter, a guy that comes back, a fan favorite, and scores a brutal first-round knockout. Pairing them up against each other, especially kind of where they are in their careers, I feel like now with Chan back and also with Yair kind of climbing up there in the rankings, I feel like that can make for a really awesome main event, or even a co-main event, or just put it on a pay-per-view, because I feel like that's going to be a fight a lot of people want to see, and it should be out there because two of them are definitely the most entertaining fighters probably on the featherweight division.
In the comments here, Wes, we have a ton of suggestions. Yair El Pantera or Du Ho Choi, Max Holloway, Cub Swanson, Artem Lobov versus Cub Swanson. Basically, what this is saying to me is that we could put this guy in there against anybody, and he's going to have one hell of an exciting fight. A lot of people want to put him in like a number one contender, leap him into that picture type of thing straight away. But you know what? I don't really care about that. I know that TKZ wants a title shot. He wants to fight for the belt. Wants to honor his country by fighting for the belt and having the belt, being the first South Korean champion. But I do not care. Whatever he does is going to be fireworks and would be main event worthy. His highlight reel alone, this included, would sell not a pay-per-view, but would sell a main event. He doesn't speak English, but the man's martial art speaks for itself. I'm just really on cloud nine. If you want to touch on that fight a little more, or we can get into our grade for the card from A to F.
I don't think we really need to talk about it too much. I feel like just the knockout victory kind of justifies itself. I'll give my my grade for the card. I would probably have to go with a C. It was off to a great start early on, but some of the fights, man, on that main card just kind of brought me down up until the main event. Now, I'm saying a C because that's one of the options, of course, on the poll that we have going. Feel free to vote on that. But I'll probably lean closer to maybe a B minus. I feel like I'd give it a little bit more credit because there were some really awesome knockouts, maybe even a B. But, for example, that Volkan versus OSP fight, I'll pass. The Ricardo Ramos-Tanaka fight, I'll pass. Tisha Torres, Beck Rawlings, I'll pass. Some of those fights just kind of brought it down a little. Even Herod Grasso wasn't the best, but I'd give it a B minus. I feel like some of the fights, including the Andrade Hill fight, make up for that, including some of the finishes that we saw.
I grade on a curve, on a severe curve. So a little bit depends on my mood one day to the next. I'll give it a D just because I'm a grumpy son of a gun. It is late. But, Wes, I'm going to give this card an A. Basically because, like I said, I got that shot of adrenaline from TKZ landing that uppercut and sleeping Dennis the Menace. I'm so stunned and stoked about that I'm capping off the card with that moment, with him coming back, was worth the card getting an A. Of course, I only have the three options, A, C, and F. But, yeah, I'm super stoked about that finish there. The rest of the card, it wasn't great. Felice Herrig, Alexa Grasso wasn't fantastic, but let's touch on that real fast. Felice Herrig looked pretty damn good, but also at the same time, Alexa Grasso looked hesitant, and she would really only start to flurry within the last 30 seconds of each round, or really in the last minute of the entire fight. And even when she did that, Felice would counter with putting her in the clinch. We mentioned before the fight card started that Felice is really strong, really good in the clinch. Alexa is somewhat untested. Do you think that, one, Felice Herrig's, do you think her stock went through the roof? And how much do you think that Alexa Grasso's dropped?
Let's see. I probably would say that Felice, her stock didn't really raise too much. I feel like it did probably slightly just because she did beat a person that a lot of people do enjoy watching fight, and that was Grasso. Then on the returning end, I don't think Grasso really lost too much in this. I feel like a lot of people, of course, say that you learn more from suffering your first loss, and I feel like that's one thing that can help Grasso grow, especially the fact that she's so young in her mixed martial arts career, and also just her life. She's only 23 years old. She's a year older than me. I'm still pretty young myself. So I feel like she has plenty of room for improvement and plenty of years to grow, and I think that's one thing we'll see as she continues to evolve as a person, both in the cage and out. Have good expectations for her later on, but I think Felice is definitely, after watching that fight, she just seemed like a better fighter now. Grasso didn't really throw too many exchanges, and you said it right, she didn't do what she needed to in the beginning or in the middle of the round. She waited towards the end a little bit too late. Wasn't really impressed with her performance, but I was pretty impressed with Felice's performance. I think Felice will probably get a top, probably around the 10th ranking. I see a lot of people, and also what she called out, she wanted that rematch with Paige. I'm not sure if she'll get that. Also wanted Watterson, but I don't think she's ready for Watterson. I think somebody like Joanne Calderwood maybe. That was one of the only names I really saw that stood out. But besides that, I'm not really sure. So I'm curious to see who you think maybe Felice should fight next.
I'm very short-sighted every time that I make a fight happen. And I was going to say we could give her Tisha Torres, but they've already fought once. Felice Herrig lost the decision. But I just like to match up ladies that were, they're on the same card. They both got victories. They're having a similar career trajectory, so that could be something that we could do. A rematch with Tisha Torres, but that would be 2 rematches in a row for the Tiny Tornado. I don't really know, but I was impressed that every time Grasso threw something, Felice was countering really well with overhand right and catching. I know it was a right hand that caught Alexa Grasso over and over and over again. She showed that she's a really strong girl. I don't think that either person's stock is going to move a whole bunch. You know, Alexa Grasso's is going to go down just like 1 notch. Felice Herrig's is going to go up just 1 notch. MMA on ice, I am drinking Ortavez Goza by Sierra Nevada. It's a fantastic beer. I absolutely love sour beers. But so I don't really know what's next for Felice Herrig. I'm not great at doing matchmaking immediately after the event is over, but pretty damn impressive performance by Herrig. Let's move to an even more impressive performance in after we do the co-main event, you and I always do the WTF of the card. My WTF of the card is going to go to Flyin Brian J. You picked Anthony Hamilton and said that he was a near lock. WTF, Flyin Brian. Pull it together, buddy. Fucking Marcel Fortuna slept him clean at 310 of round number 1. What's your WTF of the card, Wes?
I don't think you should be so hard on yourself, first off, because, I mean, we kind of talked about it beforehand. Hamilton had some good reasons to win the fight, but just didn't fight that smart. My WTF, just kind of looking through everything that we saw, had to go to probably, respectfully, Adam Milstead's knee injury that happened in the main event on the preliminary cards. Not really the prelims. I mean, it's all on Fox Sports 1, of course. But, man, just watching Adam Milstead first get injured I think, in the first round, and you could see that he was visibly hurt with a knee. I think it was his right. You and I were both watching it when it happened. It was pretty painful to watch. Blade just kept freaking taking him down, suplexing him, tossing him, ragdolling him every single moment that he had. Blades had a really impressive performance, but that leg and the knee specifically of Milstead was not going to hold up. And in that second round, I caught up to him, and we saw a pretty gruesome injury that may put Milstead out for, I'm going to guess, probably the next year. I don't think we'll see him back in 2017. I think we'll probably see him back in the cage in 2018, which really sucks for him because he was undefeated before this fight. WTF.
Speaking of WTF, we could also give a WTF to Milstead's corner for letting him go out for the second round after he injured his knee in the first round. We've seen this a lot lately. It's been a buzzing topic in the MMA world. Coaches or corners letting their fighter go out for the second round or the next round after like Donald Cerrone, he got knocked out at the end of the first round. They let him go out for the second round. Here, Milstead, gruesome knee injury in the first round. They showed that replay, and it really bent the wrong direction. But his corner, he was massaging it in between rounds the whole time. He wasn't listening to his coaches. He was just like, fuck, my knee hurts real bad. I don't really want to do this anymore. But his corner sent him out. Wes, do you think they should have sent him out?
I don't think they should have, especially when you're in a situation like that, when it could be putting a possible career on the line. I feel like Milstead, his career is now going to be pretty impacted. We, of course, don't know the significance to that injury, but I feel like just from watching that and seeing the pain that he went through, I don't even know if he got rolled off in like a whatever they call it. But I mean, I would have thrown in the towel. I feel like you should not be putting your fighters at risk when it comes to injuries like that. I understand that you got to this point in your career that you're headlining a preliminary card on Fox Sports 1, but man, if it's going to be something that could be a career-ending injury, because it could be for all we know, I don't think it's that safe. So I personally would not have put him back in for that second round.
Yeah, man, it's not only is it a career-altering injury, it's like a life-altering injury. You need your knees to walk the fuck around. So to send him out and maybe have severe damage to his knee, like they said that the dude has a 12-hour job doing something, so that's going to hinder his ability to make money outside of the octagon, which, I mean, that kind of sucks in its own right, but they shouldn't have let him go out. They should have realized that's a serious knee injury. He's getting tossed around like a little kid against Curtis Blades. Let's save him for the next one. Let's get this knee looked at and just throw in the white flag, and let's move on to the next one. Let's see. Ryan J's WTF of the card was OSP losing to Volkan Ozdemir. We said in the pre-fight breakdown that Ozdemir has some really solid striking ability, and Ovince St. Preux, he's really awkward. He doesn't throw straight shots, and he doesn't throw much in combination. He didn't wrestle that much. I think he tried 4 takedowns, didn't get Volkan down a single time. And then Volkan just used his superior striking ability to get a decision over Ovince St. Preux. What do you think of Volkan? What do you have any idea what's next for him? And what do we do with Ovince?
Um, the fight overall to me wasn't really that exciting, and I feel like it was just because both never really did anything to engage in trying to just fight consistently. I feel like it was just trying to find a moment here and there to be able to get a finish. And besides that, there wasn't really excitement in the fight. One thing I noticed about OSP, and this goes with past OSP performances, is that he's so reliant on landing that left hand. And if he doesn't, even before he tries to land it, he usually is backtracking towards the cage and also just swinging with that one punch. He's not really looking for combinations. And it kind of leans on it too much, doesn't really throw it with the most intelligence. And I feel like that's one thing that really hurt him in this fight, along with struggling a little as the fight went on, despite having a pretty strong third round to close. Um, didn't see him. I did see OSP getting the victory, of course. Uh, didn't think Volkan got the win, but then again, it's hard to side for a fighter or make a debate about a decision that was as close as that when the fight wasn't really that exciting to begin with. I don't think Volkan. I don't have really the highest expectations for him in his UFC career, but we're gonna have to see. He still has plenty of room, especially now beating OSP. He could be in the top 15 come Monday on the UFC.com rankings. I think OSP is probably going to go down towards the end. Not really sure where he will go next because he has lost 3 in a row. Kind of sucks for him, but not really an exciting fight.
How about this? Volkan Ozdemir versus Jared Cannonier and Ovince St. Preux versus Misha Cirkunov after Misha re-signs with the UFC and does not go to Bellator.
Did you say OSP versus Misha?
Yeah.
I think Misha would beat him pretty easily, but I do like that fight. Also, Jared, if he loses to Glover, which that fight's going to happen this upcoming weekend, I think that would be a pretty solid fight to make. So I like that call with Volkan Ozdemir versus Jared Cannonier.
Yeah, thanks, man. Just off the top of my head, doing some matchmaking there. Let's see. Next fight down, we talked about Anthony Hamilton, Marcel Fortuna. So Fortuna, he's actually a light heavyweight. He knocked out Anthony Hamilton, who's a big heavyweight. Hamilton had a 48-pound advantage on him. Couldn't corral him. Fortuna was teeing off on his dome piece, slept him pretty gruesomely at 310 of the very first round. Do you think that Fortuna will stay at heavyweight, or do you think that he would benefit from dropping down a weight class? Now, let me preface this. As always, the heavyweight division is more shallow. So Marcel Fortuna, he showed off a lot of movement tonight. Do you think that he should stay at heavyweight, being the smaller guy, and just try to have that speed and movement advantage, or try to? I think that 205 is a little bit has more depth. Do you think he should contend with those sharks?
I think in the post-fight interview, Fortuna talked about moving back down just because he was pretty small for the division. Also, Hamilton had been knocked out twice before. I know you and I both sided with him in this one, but Fortuna was able to get the knockout over a guy that has been knocked out twice, pretty much put unconscious. I think Fortuna's going to move back to light heavyweight, like you said, but I'm not really sure he's going to have the best success just because I feel like some of the guys are going to be able to overwhelm him. When he was on the season of The Ultimate Fighter, he was competing at light heavyweight, and I feel like those fighters were just a little bit too quick for him and able to overwhelm him with pressure, which is how I thought Hamilton would get the win, but he didn't. I don't think he'll probably do as well in light heavyweight as he would in heavyweight, but then again, we could see him knocked out brutally at heavyweight just because so many guys have and carry that much more muscle mass and also are going to weigh a lot more. So I'm not really sure. I feel like he's just kind of an average fighter that could go either way, but I don't think we're ever really going to see him crack like the top 10.
We've skipped over James Vick versus Abel Trujillo, and the reason for that is Wes. I honestly was having some life issues during that fight, so I missed bits and pieces of it. But I did notice that Abel. Correct me if I'm wrong. Abel was doing really well early, like he always does. Kind of faded. James Vick hit him with like a double jumping flying knee that really cracked Abel like back, and then slapped on a Darce choke after James Vick had tried to slap on a few Darce choke attempts prior to that. So basically, really impressive performance for James Vick, but I did miss some of it. So how'd it go down, Wes?
I It was okay. I didn't really think Trujillo had any moments that made him look like he was going to be able to get the finish. He landed a couple shots here and there, but they weren't anything fight ending like we've seen in previous Abel Trujillo performances. James Vick just fought a lot smarter. Trujillo just being a little reckless and a little careless in there, like we have seen in previous fights of his. Vic now did get that Darce choke from a failed submission or a failed takedown attempt from Trujillo in the third round. Now, that was his first Darce choke victory in his career and also his first win since losing to Beneil Dariush back in June of last year. So, pretty impressive performance from Vic. We can give our performances later on. That could be one that we'll see whenever it gets announced. But a pretty impressive performance, especially for beating up a guy in Trujillo who's dangerous on the feet and can bring it to you in the first round. So, good submission victory for Vic. Probably we'll see him get a top 15 at the end of the list next, or somebody that's right on the outside.
Yeah, that sounds good. And it's a pretty big feather in his cap. A lot of people know who Abel Trujillo is because he doesn't have that many finishes, but he is known as a finisher. And prior to now, his two major losses were to El Kukui, Tony Ferguson, and Khabib, or not Khabib, it's Habib the Eagle Nurmagomedov. So that's a pretty big feather in James Vick's cap. I expect big things from this guy in the future. Yes, we will give our performance bonuses a little later on. I will look up the real ones shortly here. But Wes, you and I did pretty damn awful on our picks for this fight card. You went 7-5. I went 6-6, which is just god awful because the main card here was a ton of upsets. For a brief moment at the very beginning, I thought that Angela Hill was going to get the better of Jessica Andrade, but it's very surprising that as the fight goes on, Jessica Andrade, even though she's throwing like full power in every single strike that she throws, and she's always walking her opponent down, she did not seem to fade or slow down whatsoever. That was probably fight of the night, but it was, even though it was super one-sided, Jessica Andrade landed those hooks, those John Lineker style punches on Angela Hill over and over and over again. Hill did have a few good moments where she landed on Jessica. I think it was in the second, maybe the third round, it seemed like Angela Hill dropped her, but I think it was just a push and a slip from Jessica. But super impressive performance by actually, honestly, both girls. I expected Jessica to take down Angela Hill a lot quicker than she did. So I'm impressed by Angela for hanging in there. She did have improved footwork, she did have improved striking, range keeping abilities, but just Jessica Andrade was too much for her. What's your takeaway from this fight? And did Angela Hill's stock raise for you?
Um, Man, this was a really awesome fight just to get off to start with. Really enjoyed some of the action that we did see, but you're right, it was pretty one-sided with Andrade getting the better of Hill for pretty much all of the fight. However, Hill did have a couple of moments where she was able to land and do a little bit of damage here and there, but Andrade is the John Lineker of the women's strawweight division and just kept coming forward. I didn't really like the way that she engaged in some of the striking battles. I feel like that might hurt her when she gets to fight Joanna Jędrzejczyk. However, of course, you pronounce her last name. It's always different. I think Andrade, she needs to work a lot on her upper body movement because it wasn't there. She just fought a little tall. She just fought a little hunchback too and just kept coming forward, which, I mean, of course, is good. She was able to get the win. But Joanna is a different animal than Angela Hill. Hill, I feel like her stock did raise a little bit in this fight just because she did come in as the Invicta FC strawweight champion. We did talk about her performances over Kayleen Medeiros, which was her last fight, who took her down a couple times in that fight. I thought Hill would get taken down a couple times in this fight too and get submitted. She showed adversity, kept getting up, whenever Andrade got her down, which I think only happened once. And Hill hung in there. She has a hell of a chin, I can tell you that much. Took a lot of damage, uh, but also kept coming forward in her own regard. I feel like she put on a pretty decent performance against a girl who's probably going to get the next shot for the strawweight title. So pretty impressive performance from Hill despite the loss, and Andrade will probably be the next to receive a title shot.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like the strawweight division has too much, right at the top there. You and I have been talking a lot about lately that Rose Namajunas or Michelle Watterson is going to get the next shot. Did that ever happen? Did JJ ever announce her next opponent?
She did not, and I'm kind of surprised about that because one of the reasons that we talked about it was because I personally heard her say when she was talking to a few people that she was going to announce her fight within the week. That didn't happen, of course, so not really sure who her next opponent's going to be.
Well, yeah, it could be Andrade, but I like JJ versus Watterson. I think that'd be a fun fight. I think JJ probably thumps her, but, it's marketable. Both girls have fan favorite kind of styles. That would be a fun one. Let's move down to welterweight fight between Nico Price and Alex Morono. Morono looked to be getting the better of Nico. He dropped Nico in the very first round, looked to almost finish him with some ground and pound. It seemed like Nico was saved by the bell. Then second round comes out. Morono he was utilizing a lot of fantastic footwork early on. He seemed to start slowing as Nico was able to. Well, how it went was Morono was waiting for Nico to come at him, and Morono was countering him, and that's how he dropped Nico. So between rounds, I think Nico's corner said, hey, bro, he's countering you. We need you to wait for him. And then when Nico was doing the countering, when Morono was doing the leading, then Nico was getting the better of him. At the very end of the second round, he dropped Morono, and Morono was in the fetal position, breathing real heavy, knocked out cold. It was 5 minutes of round number 2. The reason why I want to talk about this fight next is because Jack Mooney thinks that Mike Perry versus Nico Price is the next fight to make in the welterweight division for those respective guys. And I think that that's phenomenal. Both dudes are super young. Both guys are really, Perry's not actually that dynamic, but they're both really athletic men. They both have a lot of power. Nico says he wants to be in fights that are exciting, and I think that would be a barn burner, a swanger, and a banger, and I would love to watch that fight. Wes, overall, what do you think of this performance? My homie Alex Morono, he still loves him on a Marth, so I've still got his back. But what's your takeaway from Price versus Morono?
It was a pretty awesome fight, especially from the get-go. Probably one of the underrated fights on the card, just because, of course, it was on Fight Pass. And it was a long, long time ago. This happened at, for me, 7 o'clock p.m., and that was hours and hours ago. So my memory from kind of the events that went down are kind of have faded at least. Alex Morono did have the better of Nico Price in the beginning of that fight. Nico came on strong at the end of that second and was able to get the finish and brutally, brutally knock out Morono. A possible other name to possibly receive a performance of the night victory. Man, I thought it was impressive from Nico, especially with the fact that Alex hadn't been finished since June of 2014, and also the fact Morono was on such a win streak, having already won 2 UFC fights over Muntasri and Noak. Price, I think, if he's matched up against Mike Perry next, Price is definitely a scrapper, dude. But I'm a little worried about his chin. I feel like at some point that's going to catch up to him. He does get hit a lot. Morono did tag him a lot. And in comparison between Morono and Perry, I think Perry is the harder striker, probably not as dynamic. But I think that power might cause a knockout, and we might see Nico Price go down. I'd probably pick Perry in that one, but it would definitely be a barn burner of a fight to watch.
Yeah, and I mentioned before that I didn't think Nico Price's fight IQ was that great, and early on it didn't seem like it was great, but his corner reeled him in with some fight IQ, so maybe he doesn't necessarily need to have his own great fight IQ. He must have a decent corner in there instructing him. Something to note is that Alex Morono does not train with a very good gym, as Brian Stan was saying on the broadcast, but yeah, impressive performance from, I think his nickname's the Prototype, or no, the Hybrid. The Prototype or the Hybrid, whatever, Nico Price. Let's go to the Scrapper, Chaz Skelly versus Chris Grutzmacher. It was super impressive. Chaz Skelly basically had a flawless performance, but it has an asterisk next to it that Grutzmacher isn't that good. So, I mean, you go from facing Darren Elkins to somebody like Gritzmacher, or Maximo Blanco to Gritzmacher. I mean, that's not exactly a step up in competition, but it was pretty impressive. What are your takeaways from Chaz Skelly? I doubt that his stock went raised for you, but nonetheless, he barely got touched. Submission, rear naked choke, round number 2. What do you think of that fight?
He fought really smart from the beginning, and it was definitely a fight that I thought he was going to win. I think all of us thought he would win, and pulled it out. Did exactly what he was supposed to do, and I was pretty impressed. I don't think his stock raised too much, but I do think that he's deserving of getting a top 15 fighter. And I'll share my opponent in a sec. In his post-fight interview, he asked to fight at UFC 211, which is going down, I think, on May 13th in Dallas, Texas. Now, of course, we already know where Chaz Skelly's from. In Texas, just a couple hours away, probably minutes. I'm not really sure. Don't know my geography that much. But the first opponent that popped into my mind, just kind of looking off the styles between what Chaz Skelly, the scrapper, has done in his UFC career, and also what this opponent has done in the career, I feel like it would be a really entertaining fight. And that opponent is Charles do Bronx Oliveira. I think both of them stylistically match up really well. I think Skelly, coming off this two impressive submission victories despite the loss to Darren Elkins, and with Charles Oliveira having lost, I guess, 2 in a row, maybe 3. I don't know what it is now. I think that would be an awesome fight to make. And stylistically, just definitely a possibility for a fight of the night. And it would be awesome to see that go down, especially in front of Chaz's hometown if he can get the win.
I think that's fantastic matchmaking, Wes. It's exciting because both guys are, submission first, grappling first, and also tonight, Chaz against Gritzmacher. Now, again, Gritzmacher's not the highest level of competition, but Chaz showed some improved striking abilities. His movement and his utilization of combinations and his right hand I was impressed with it. And I was typing out a text or a tweet. I was like, man, Chaz's boxing ability's looking great right now. He goes in for a takedown. Of course, his bread and butter is the takedown game, but he did have a little bit improved hand speed, combination, striking ability in general this evening. So somebody that's basically a grappler first, but showed off some power, some real dynamism, was Ricardo Ramos versus Mishinora Tanaka. I forget how Brian Stan told us how to say it, but I was pretty damn impressed by Ricardo Ramos. I looked like he was going to get the finish over Mishinora Tanaka very early on in that fight. It was impressive that Mishinora was able to come back. I actually scored the fight 28-28, a draw, giving the first round 10-8 for Ricardo and 10-9s in 2 and 3 for Mishinora. But basically, Ricardo did the most damage, and we were watching the fights together, actually, Wes. And in the third round, Mishinori got warned for timidity, for being timid. He wasn't engaging at all in the third round, and Herb Dean warned him about it, and I think that could have influenced the judges. How did you score the fight, and what do you think about Ricardo's performance?
You and I both scored it, I think, a draw. I know I had mine 28-28 as well. I thought overall the performance of Ramos, especially in the first round, he looked really, really good. But then as the fight kind of went on in the second round, I don't remember specifically what happened, but he did something that I wasn't really a big fan of. I feel like he was winning the fight and then just made a simple mistake. Now, he's younger than both of us. He's only 21 years old. Did get the decision victory unanimous in this one, but I was not a fan of the 30-27 scorecard that I saw, and I don't think you liked it either, because I think that I just didn't think – I thought it was a little bit closer than that, but I thought Ramos was able to get the victory. Even though I did score a draw, I feel like Ramos just did a little more overall and the full perspective of the fight. Now, when it did come, to that third round, I do think that the timidity warning from Herb Dean played a factor in the judge's decision, just because he did have to stop the fight and direct his attention to Tanaka for that little flaw. But then again, Tanaka wasn't – I can't talk. I'll just call him Tanaka. He wasn't throwing, and it was kind of understandable. So I do see why he lost the fight, but pretty impressive performance from Ramos.
Yeah, man, 30-27 was bullshit because Tanaka had – He landed 24 more strikes than Ricardo and got a takedown in that third round. So it should have been 29-28 and then a draw, because I think round one definitely was a 10-8 for Ricardo. But like I mentioned, that timidity warning from Herb Dean probably cost Tanaka, not an L, but he could have got a draw. Nonetheless, I was impressed with the 21-year-old Ricardo Ramos. Pretty fun stuff. I think that there's only, Tisha Torres versus Beck Rawlings was probably, maybe, the low light of the card if it wasn't St. Preux versus Ozdemir. So I really am going to skip it. I'll give you an opportunity to talk about it if you'd like to. But Khalil Roundtree finally showed some takedown defense against Daniel, the Werewolf of Texas, Jolly. So not only when Khalil landed that knee that knocked out Jolly, but right before that, his not superior, but it was pretty a fantastic sprawl from Khalil Roundtree. He sprawled, and then Daniel Jolly persisted with the takedown attempt, was able to ward it off, and then hit him with a thunderous knee to the dome piece, followed by what looked like live to me, a knee to the face while Daniel Jolly's both knees were down, but he was already knocked out, so it didn't matter. Ended up being a knee to the chest. I don't know if just that pure sprawl is going to be great for Khalil Roundtree going forward, but finally this hyped prospect got a victory. They showed us this fight twice tonight. What did you think of Khalil's performance? And do you think that going forward he will have a improved takedown defense?
I don't know. I would kind of wanted to see what would happen if Khalil went down and was on his back, because I feel like that's where he has his biggest flaws. It isn't, of course, in his takedown defense, but he does struggle off his back a little as well. Now, he was able to stop that takedown of Daniel Jolly early on, scored that knockout victory. That, of course, late punch was a little bit late. But, yeah, Daniel Jolly was already knocked out. Khalil Roundtree, a pretty impressive knockout, especially for kind of what he was built up to be and didn't fulfill it. So I think that Khalil definitely needs some improvements when it comes to his clinching, and also probably off his back when it comes just to wrestling overall. Khalil needs some work there, but his striking is definitely one thing to be feared. I'm kind of scattered. I'm a little tired. It's late in the afternoon, but I think Khalil, he could have a future. He just needs to keep working on his skills when it comes to his wrestling abilities.
It's definitely late in the afternoon, Wes. Okay, so I'm kidding. I'm sorry. I know. It is late. It's 2 o'clock your time. The fight card got over super late, but I think we've covered everything on the fight card. It's time to give our performance bonuses. I have the real ones here. Let me just read those first, and then we'll see if we agree with them. Andrade Hill, fight of the night. Performances of the night go to the Korean Zombie and Marcel Fortuna.
I 100% agree. I think those are exactly the fight of the night to make, and the performances couldn't be better. I know a lot of people were saying, "Oh, James Vick deserves a performance," or Chaz Kelly, but Marcel Fortuna, he went in there and fought on short notice. First off, as a natural light heavyweight against a guy who weighed 48 pounds heavier in Anthony Hamilton, and Anthony Hamilton has been fighting at heavyweight for years, since dating back all the way to October of 2010. So I think Marcel Fortuna definitely was deserving of that bonus. And curious to see, I know he's going back to light heavyweight, I believe, but definitely deserving of a performance for him.
Yep, I agree with them. I would love to give one. You know what? I'm going to give out 4 performance bonuses. I just want to give an extra performance bonus. So I agree with what the UFC, WME, IMG actually gave, but I also want to give Nico Price an extra $50,000 for his performance. It was impressive. Young dude. I enjoy him, and his favorite fighter is Anderson the Spider Silva, so I just think that he deserves a little extra dough just for that. Wes, I'm going to let you go to sleep. The show's over. Let's close the thing. I'm Flyin Brian J. Follow me on Twitter at Flyin Brian J. He is Wesley Riddle. You can follow him on Twitter at AllThatMMA. You can read him on MMAsucka.com. And obviously, I am representing MMA Mania Thank you all so much for joining us. Thank you for sharing this video and for giving it a thumbs up on YouTube, for voting for for what grade you would give it, A to F on Facebook. And we'll see you on the next MMA preamble, which we will be doing before UFC 208, where Anderson Silva will knock out Derek Brunson. Thanks again, guys. Namaste.